is up, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of Locked Up with David Matlock, the safe space for sports nerds. Glad to be back. We're talking about football today. We had a good week of games here, and we have the playoff picture to discuss with the playoffs on the horizon after week 17. There are a lot of people trying to get their way into playoff contention, and especially since the NFL added that extra playoff slot, there will be a lot more to fight for. So, we have a lot to get into, so let's get started. All right, in the NFC, it is a little messy. We have the Packers, Seahawks, and New Orleans Saints in kind of a three-way battle for the number one seed. The number one seed this year is a lot more important because the number one seed is the only one that gets a first-round bye. So anytime you can rest your players in football, that is most necessary. So this is going to be something to fight for. So the Packers will get the one seed if they win. If they win, they've already got the best record. It's done deal. It's a done deal. But if New Orleans wins, Green Bay loses, and Seattle wins, they get the first seed. But if Seattle wins, the Packers lose, and the Saints lose, then they get the first seed. It's a little confusing, but the fact of the matter is there's going to be a lot to fight for in that one seed. Definitely some good games for the one seeds. But, I mean, the Buccaneers are not in play for that at all. They're kind of already locked up at the fifth seed because the divisional leader of the NFC Beast, the best teams in the league, will get the fourth seed. Those teams freaking suck, man. But we're going to have to deal with it because that's the divisional structure that everyone so strongly defends. The Washington football team, the Cowboys, and the Giants all fighting to come out of that horrible conference. I mean, horrible division. Oh God, we have 5 teams in the AFC who are 10-5, and we literally have to suffer through watching a 6 and maybe even a 6-10 team potentially making the playoffs. That is where we are. That's where we are in 2020. And then besides the NFC East, we have the Cardinals and the Bears, as well as the Rams competing for the other playoff slot. The Rams, Bears, and Cardinals are competing for the last 2 slots, actually. Those are actually 3 teams that are pretty interesting to watch. The Bears started off undefeated, and then they just had a mid-season collapse. Started to get things back on track with Mitch Trubisky after Foles got hurt. The offense has been looking better under him. The Rams, they started off the year looking like a solid team. Their defense has been really good this year. Not really that much of a run game. And Jared Goff, I've never been high on the guy. He's really struggled with turnovers. He doesn't do well under pressure. You give him pressure and he buckles. And he is out potentially for the season with a thumb injury. I believe he dislocated it and he is scheduled for thumb surgery. So he will not be there for a very crucial matchup with the Cardinals. And the Cardinals they're a weird team. They're a team, they had the Hail Mary versus the Bills. They've had an explosive offense. They added DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. I mean, they're a team where it seems like this should be a 10-6 team, but they've had some inconsistencies because Kyler, a young quarterback, I think he's been dealing with some injuries out there. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury as well as Cliff Kingsbury said that he has a lower leg injury, something like that. So the guy's been a little beat up this year, but it'll definitely be entertaining to watch him in the playoffs. All right, and then in the AFC. This is where it gets good. So the Chiefs already locked up the 1 seed. The Steelers and the Bills are fighting for the 2 seed. And then there is a 5-way competition for the last 4 playoff spots. We have the Titans, Browns, Ravens, Colts, and Dolphins all fighting for those last spots. One of them is going to get left out, but all 5 of these teams are 10-5. All 5 of these teams would give us some entertaining football to watch. I mean, Titans, we want to see King Henry. Ryan Tannehill's been having a great year. No pass rush whatsoever. No pass rush. Browns, Baker Mayfield looks like they've been getting it together, but they lost to the freaking Jets of all people. Ravens, Lamar Jackson. I mean, they're a solid team. I think they're the best of the 5 teams here. I think they're better than everyone else. Colts, Jonathan Taylor has come unlocked at the last half of the season. He's been playing great football the last 3 or 4 games. Really been helping my fantasy team out here. The Dolphins, they're an X factor because they're so well coached. But Tua, is he the answer? Is he even the answer for this season, much less the future? I mean, it's definitely something to be said about a guy who doesn't really turn the ball over, but it's not like he's really knocking your socks off, I guess. I mean, he's had some solid games. He's played pretty well, but he got benched in the Raiders game, and he only threw for 99 yards on like 22 attempts, which is mathematically not very good. So, looking at those 5 teams, I can make a definitive statement. They are all better than every team in the NFC East, and I don't know why we have to suffer through watching a team in the NFC East potentially making the playoffs. God help us. All right, so looking at I'm going to focus on the AFC right now just to talk about the games that they have. So there are some really important games coming up. Most specifically in the AFC, the biggest game will be the Steelers-Browns, with Cleveland favored at -7 with a point total of 42.5 and a money line of Pittsburgh plus 240 and the Browns -305. So Vegas, I got this from DraftKings. I think Vegas probably has a similar sort of deal. They're pretty high on the Browns to make this because, I mean, the Browns are in a make or break situation because if they lose this game, they're out because the Dolphins are actually the other team who have an unfavorable matchup of the 5 teams. Those 2 teams have the least favorable matchups. But in the tiebreaker scenario, the Dolphins actually would make the playoffs instead of the Browns because they have a better conference record at 7-5 versus the Browns at only 6-6. And you see that loss to the Jets. How did you lose to the Jets? How did you do it? That is going to come and bite them in the butt. Granted, okay, the Jets game, I'll give them some leeway because they were without 4 of their top receivers. They had to sign guys off the street. The run game is probably the one thing the Jets are actually like a average team at. And I mean, I can't explain why the Jets are playing well right now. That makes no sense. How did they win? How did they lose this game? I don't understand. But yeah, so the Browns Steelers, that's going to be a big game because the Steelers actually have something to play for because both the Bills and the Steelers are fighting for the 2 seed. Not that big of a deal, right? Unless you think about in the playoffs, the potential of you having to face Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs earlier than the AFC Championship, you probably want to put as much distance between yourself and Patrick Mahomes as possible. And they're definitely thinking we want to make sure we have everyone together. We want to have everyone healthy. We want to make sure we have enough time here. Let's get an easy win as the 2 seed, get our confidence up so we can get in the vibe of like, hey, we can do this. We can take on the Chiefs. But, I mean, they're not going to just lay down and die for this Browns team. This is a divisional game. It's going to be important for them. So it's definitely a game to watch. Probably going to be one of the most interesting games of the week. And then Titans at Texans. Titans at Texans is going to be an easy game for the Titans, I think. The Titans are favored -7.5, point total 56, money line Tennessee -375, Houston at +280. However, that Titans lack of a pass rush, be aware because this could be a close game because Deshaun Watson is big time. He's a star, and he's going to have time. No doubt in my mind he's going to have time. I think Laramie Tunsil is hurt. I don't care. That Titans pass rush is not good. He's gonna have enough time. I mean, he's worked with no time. He'll still have enough time for Deshaun Watson. Because throughout the year, I mean, the Texans have been horrible. But it'll be a game. But I'm gonna have to go with the Titans because the Houston defense is just so bad this year, man. They're just not with it. So Titans are a lock. Colts are a lock. They're playing the Jags. Jags are trash. They locked up the 1 seed. Colts are favored -13.5. They're favored by 2 scores. Point total 49.5. Money line Jags +525. Colts -770. If you want to make a little bit of cheddar and say the Jags are going to put up a fight and take out the Colts, be my guest. You put down about $10. You make about $52. So, I mean, you could definitely make a profit off it, and there's no way it's going to happen, but so Colts, Titans, locks. Those guys are making it into the playoffs. Ravens are playing the Bengals. That is a lock. That's a lock. There is no way Lamar Jackson is about to let the Bengals stop him from getting in the playoffs. They are favored minus 11.5 as a lock if I've ever heard one. So that's 3 teams. Dolphins at Bills. It depends if the Bills really care about the 2 seed or not. If they want to rest guys, if they want to make sure everyone's okay for the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, the Dolphins are a well-coached team, but the quarterback situation, I'm going to have to go with the Bills on this one. But even then, even if the Dolphins lose, the Browns have to win. They have to win. And I don't think it's going to happen. So, sorry, Browns fans. I think y'all are going to be missing out on the playoffs yet again for the 2021 playoff picture. All right, let's take a look at the NFC. The NFC. Okay, so we have the Washington football team are facing the Eagles. The Eagles are favored in that game, minus 1.5. The Washington football team actually released Dwayne Haskins today. That was their starting quarterback. Alex Smith is hurt. Dwayne Haskins, who has notoriously broken the COVID protocols this season, been stripped of his captain's title, is now no longer with the Washington football team. So the quarterback situation is going to be a big question mark. I think the guy's name is like Heineke or whatever his name is, who filled in for Haskins after Haskins threw like 2 picks in their last game. I think the Eagles take this one. I think Jalen Hurts he's been turning the ball over a little bit. Yeah, I mean, he is going to be a little turnover prone, and that front 7 is definitely going to give him a hard time. He has been not necessarily throwing picks, but he has fumbled 9 times in 3 games, which has not been good which is not a good look for him. But I still think he's going to just light up the Washington football team, because I think he is really out here to prove something, because he has been loading up the stat sheet. I think the Eagles are going to take that, which brings us to the Cowboys and the Giants. Okay, so the Cowboys could potentially make the playoffs. Cowboys are gonna. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. How are the Cowboys gonna make the playoffs? Cowboys are gonna make the playoffs. Yeah, the Cowboys are going to make the playoffs this year. Somehow the Cowboys are going to make the playoffs by beating the Giants, because the Giants are the 3rd best team in the NFC East. They might be the 2nd team. I don't know. Who cares? Cowboys are gonna win. Giants offense is just too slow. Dallas is favored by minus 2.5. It'll probably be a field goal. I think it's gonna be. I think it might be a blowout, just because Giants defense is good. Giants defense is solid. Their offense has not been hitting on anything. Danny Dimes has been looking like some pennies out here. He has not been very good for that team. I mean, he's been hurt too, so I guess I can't hold it against him. He's without Saquon. But, yeah, I think it's a pretty easy Dallas win out here. So, they could be making the playoffs, and I think it's going to happen. Moving on to better games, we have the Rams versus the Cardinals. Again, touched on it earlier. I think the Cardinals are going to be locked in for that other spot. So we got the Cowboys and the Cardinals locked in for those slots. And then we already have the Buccaneers, New Orleans Saints, Packers, and Hawks clinching a spot. And so the final playoff slot will go to the Bears. Yeah, the Bears. I think the Bears are going to beat the Packers this week. They have a lot to play for. Packers are going to fight for the 1 seed. It's going to be a tough game, man. Green Bay is favored minus 5.5. The point total is 50.5. Green Bay is favored minus 245 on the money line to Chicago plus 200. It's going to be a great game. That and the Browns-Steelers game are going to be the best games of the week. Hands down, those are going to be the best games. Besides maybe Bucks-Falcons, just because the Falcons will choose the most pointless time of the year to play a good football game. But more about them in another video. Yeah, the Bears, I think Mitch Trubisky he's looked pretty solid. Granted, they talked about signing him again next year, which, like, if you're a Bears fan, you just have to be facepalming yourself for not having a definite quarterback situation yet again. But I think David Montgomery he's going to be the X factor for this game, because the Packers' run defense is not that good. It is not that good. They had a good game against Derrick Henry, but that was in the snow. You can't make as good of cuts. And the Packers are going to be at the Bears. So, I mean, Chicago could be snowing. Who knows? But I'm about to say, man, this is gonna be a good game. I mean, you can call me crazy for not thinking that's gonna be an obvious Packers win, and maybe it could be, but I'm gonna throw in the X factor of run game, and they have just a whole lot more to play for. The Bears got to make it. Matt Nagy's got to make the playoffs this year. If he doesn't make the playoffs this year, he could be without a job. I mean, he's really gonna be on the hot seat because they started off 5-0. How do you start 5-0 and you're fighting to have a winning season? Like, you could be 500 after starting 5-0. That is a horrible back half of the season. I mean, that is atrocious. To literally be at 5-0 at a certain point in time and to have that much of a collapse with that defense, that amount of money you have on the defense with Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, Trevathan, all these guys out here on your defense, and you are scraping pennies to get into the playoffs with teams like the Rams and the Cardinals just struggling. I mean, Rams don't even have Jared Goff, for God's sakes. And the Bears are in a position to barely even make it. So, I mean, this is a must-win game. This is a must-win game for the Bears. Beyond just the playoffs, beyond Mitch Trubisky needing a contract, because if he doesn't get it here, he's going to be a backup for the rest of his career. Maybe not even he's going to be a backup. But he's got something to prove. That run game, Matt Nagy potentially losing his job, and I think the Bears having opened up the offense for Mitch Trubisky, made the intermediate routes with the play action a lot more accessible for him, opening up the middle of the field rather than just throwing an out route every freaking time, trying to just hit an out route to the sideline. I hate watching that play from the Bears, but I think they've opened it up, and I'm going to have to go with them. I'm going to have to say it's the Bears. All right, that is it for the NFC and AFC playoff pictures. I'm really excited for this coming playoff football. I think you should be excited too. There are really good games on the slates here. We could potentially have a Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. That would be so much fun to see. Patrick Mahomes, the rising talent, versus Aaron Rodgers, the old gunslinger coming back to prove his name. You know what I'm saying. This is gonna be great. This is gonna be great football. Russell Wilson, he's got something to prove because he kind of fell off in the middle of the season. The Saints, maybe they try Taysom Hill. Maybe the Steve Young comparisons that Sean Payton has been saying for the longest time, maybe they come true. And Cowboys fans will be insufferable for the next 5-6 months because somehow they sucked their way into a playoff spot. It's definitely a lot of great stuff coming, man. I'm excited. All right, that's been episode 2 of Locked Up with David Matlock. Until next time.